Too often I rely on my husband to troubleshoot problems with the RV. This appears to be the norm among traveling partners we meet. And although it is quite fortunate to have someone on board that knows the RV functions, it is even more important for the other to be in the know, especially in emergency instances where one man is down. In our new series, Natalie Learns How, we hope to empower travelers who heavily rely on their partners to operate an RV and problem solve issues. Levi, the blow dryer doesn't work.
Alright, I'll fix it. So what happened?
I was blow drying my hair and then it just stopped working. I can't turn it back on, so there's either something wrong with the plug or I broke it.
How many other things are plugged in and running?
How many other appliances were running when I was blow drying my hair?
Yeah.
I was cooking breakfast, so I had the coffee maker and the oven, and I think the dehumidifier is running, and the fan, the oscillator.
You may have tripped a breaker. An electrical breaker is an electronic safety device built into most household and RV electrical systems. If you try to run too much, say for example you have a 30 amp rig, such as we do, and you try to run the air conditioner, your oven, blow dryer, and various other appliances at the same time, eventually you're going to pull more than 30 amps. That's going to cause the wires to heat up. Without a breaker, unchecked, that wire eventually could melt, get red hot, and start a fire. So the breaker cuts your flow of electricity before a dangerous situation happens. When one trips, you have to find out where your breakers are and trip it back.
Okay.
So first you have to find your breakers. They're going to be in different places for every RV, but ours is right here. And they usually open pretty easily, and you're going to be treated to a panel that looks something like that. The part that you're interested in, you're going to see two systems. The fuses over here are for the 12 volt system, things that you're running off the battery. But your breakers are going to look something like that. A lot of times they are labeled, and you can see the one that's tripped. A tripped breaker is going to rest in between the on and off position. You can see all of these are up and that one is off. In order to reset it, I'm going to hand you the flashlight. In order to reset it, you have to turn it all the way off. So you push it down, so that's all the way in the off position, and then you pop it back up.
Oh, my blow dryer went back on.
Yep.
Why do some of these say 30 and 15 and 20?
That is the amp load that the breaker is willing to take. So the one that the blow dryer was hooked to was a 15 amp breaker. Most of the time your household plugs are going to be 15 amps. As you can see, this one says receptacles 1, receptacles 2. Our RV has two separate circuits for receptacles, and that would be your plug-in. The one labeled microwave is hooked to a 20 amp, whereas the main breaker is 30 amps. So this holds the load for the entirety of the RV. The microwave holds a 20 amp, and the air conditioning holds a 20 amp, whereas the refrigerator is a 15 amp. So if they're labeled, it's pretty easy to see what tripped.
There were a couple times during the winter I remember that we tripped a breaker also. The space heaters were running and also the dehumidifier, but in different outlets of our rig. None of these had turned off.
That probably was the inverter, and for whatever reason the circuit that our inverter is plugged into seems to be a bit more sensitive than our circuit breaker, because those plugs should be receptacle 2, this 15 amp, but it seems that the inverter trips before that breaker does most of the time.
Okay, so where's the inverter located?
I shall show you. every RV is going to have their, if they have an inverter, they're going to have it in various different spots. Ours happens to be in one of our compartments, and it looks quite like that.
Okay.
The fuse on the inverter is right up here. There's a little button here, and when it goes off, it pops up just like a turkey thermometer.
Okay.
And so if the breakers are all on inside, I usually go out here and check this one second.
So you just press it back down?
Yep, just pop it back down. And then I plug less things in.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Yeah, you could, but we have popped the main breaker in the RV park before.
You trip a main breaker.
You would trip a main breaker. That typically you're going to trip one in your rig before you trip the main 30 amp breaker. But it just depends on how old the breaker is. Sometimes breakers do get weaker over time and they trip more easily. So if you're in an RV park and the breaker's tripping frequently, you might let them know about it. But say for example, this one is a relatively old breaker. I mean, I haven't seen one like that in forever, but tripped, this one will look exactly the same. If it's tripped, it'll be flipped down halfway, and all you have to do is turn it down the rest of the way and back up. So that's about halfway is what it'll look like. You just flip it down and turn it back on, and that'll turn the power back on in your rig. If you follow me over here, that's not the typical breaker you're going to see in an RV park. A typical breaker is going to look like this one at our neighboring campsite. You'll see these look like a more modern breaker. This one's the 30 amp, it says 30. This one's the 20 amp. Always the 20 amp is your regular household plug-in on the breaker. If you're at one that has a 50 amp, you'll have a 50 amp plug and it'll say 50 amp. So same thing, when this one's tripped, it'll look exactly the same. It'll be halfway and you flip it down, or pop it the rest of the way down and turn it back on, and your 30 amp should be on.
Should you turn off your appliances before you do this?
It is a good idea to turn off your air conditioner before you do it, and then turn your air conditioner back on once you get inside the rig. Very last thing, if all else fails, every RV, especially where there's water, will have at least one of these GFCI plugs, ground fault interrupter. These plugs are really invented not as a circuit breaker, but they will trip if there's a short. Say for example, if you got water in there, that's why they install these in all bathrooms and places where it can get wet. Tripped one, you can test yours to make sure it's working. There's a test button. When you hit that, notice the green light will pop off. So now every plug that's connected to this circuit isn't going to work until you reset it. To reset those, you just simply push the button in, and if the green light comes on, it's working. If the green light doesn't come on and you push it and that button doesn't stay in, that means that either you're not getting electricity to that socket, or there's something wrong with your GFCI socket.
So just to recap, if you feel like you have tripped a breaker, step 1, make sure all of the electrical devices that are in use are turned off. Step 2, know the location of the breakers in your rig, in and out of the rig. So you'll go to the main breaker and check to see if any breakers have tripped. Step 3, if none of the breakers have tripped, then you may have been plugged into a circuit that was connected to the inverter. So check your inverter box if your rig has one. Step 4, if that hasn't tripped, then go to your main breaker provided by the RV park or the location that you're at to see if that has tripped. And finally, if no breakers have tripped, then check your GFCI plug to see if there has been any kind of disconnect in your outlets. And you can do this by simply pressing the test button and then the restart button to see if that will get the connection going.
After following all of these steps, if nothing seems to work, or if your breaker trips immediately upon turning it on and you have all electronical devices turned off, that means you might have a more major problem than just simply tripping a breaker. So if your breaker trips continually when running a minimal amount of devices, or it simply won't turn back on and just pops directly down. You might have a short in your wire, and that's more of a major electrical problem. I would call somebody who knows RV electrical systems or repairman to take a look at that sort of thing.
Hi, thank you very much for watching our tutorial. Hope it helps some out with RV troubleshooting. And please, if you like our videos, subscribe below to our YouTube channel, or you can read about our adventures on henleyshappytrails.com.
If you click on the little eye thing up in the corner of this video, which might have had a little thing that shot out, you can visit our t-shirt shop, which has t-shirts, mugs, and various other things, and it has funny little RV sayings on them, so check them out, and all sales help us out a little bit. So thank you very much, and
Happy
trails!